Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Sal. I'm coming to you in black and white before we get to our Pentecost service today. I'd like to read part of a letter to you from our UCC national officers concerning the events of this past week. A man was lynched by police in Minneapolis this week. George Floyd was lynched on the streets of Minneapolis with the knee of an officer who needed no noose. As comrades looked on, reminiscent of the public lynchings of the past, George Floyd pleaded for breath for over 5 minutes as the callous vigilante actions of 4 officers, hooded in blue, ignored his plea. The unrestrained white rage that stalked Colin Kaepernick taking a knee on AstroTurf to protest violence against black bodies escapes this country's watchful gaze as an authorized officer takes a knee on the throat of a black man pinned to the asphalt. Is this how white supremacy prays? A black man was almost lynched in Central Park this week. Amy Cooper intended to steal his breath. She knew the gravity of a white woman's plea to be saved from the throes of a black man in America. Her words were deliberately weaponized with fragility. White women's tears are their own eyewitness. She knew exactly what she was doing, so much so that she warned the victim she was armed with whiteness and would weaponize it if he did not submit to her demands. This is what stand your ground looks like for those who believe they actually own the ground. We can no longer suffer the luxury of looking away. We must speak truth with power for the salvation of all. Black people were lynched in America this week and all the weeks before it, lynched by vigilantes who stand their ground, lynched by religious zealots that have whitewashed God, lynched by the silence of white liberals, lynched by those sworn to protect and serve. And yet, as we enter this season of Pentecost, we are reminded that the breath of God still blows where she will. The fire of God's righteousness still burns within those who believe. The power of God still emboldens us to tear down every stronghold, and the will of God still remains supreme. In the strength of that power, we must be compelled to speak up, stand up, and show up. In Minneapolis, in New York, in Ferguson, in Baltimore, and in every city across the land, somehow we must garner the strength to call out this evil. We must bolster the courage to face this head on and to call it by name. Only when we choose to face the evil can we cast it from our collective being. This is the work of the entire church. We are called to uproot white supremacy in all of its forms. Whiteness must no longer be our God. Justice was lynched in America this week, but thanks be to God, justice refuses to die. We light our first candle this morning in remembrance of George Floyd, the 46-year-old man who was murdered on Monday as he was brutally pinned down on the ground by police officers in Minneapolis. He pleaded with them 14 times that he couldn't breathe. And so, we light a candle in honor and remembrance of George Floyd
And we pray for the end of the systemic racism that has plagued our country for far too long now.